Isn't this pretty?
Why, hello there, gorgeous.
Hi. I put on a little lipstick
I did
and
too.
I put on earrings. So
You
I
look
took,
like you are in hog heaven over there.
oh
The
my
pose
God.
that you're in.
Yeah. So you know what I've been doing? I think I told you that I inadvertently deleted all the Zoom backgrounds.
Oh, bummer.
I know. But you know what? I turned it around and I'm like, okay, I am only going to upload Zoom backgrounds that I like, things that I want to bring into my life, manifest.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
So I'm excited.
And then you get to be seen in it.
And I get to be seen in it and I get to see myself in it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like be witnessed and witness myself. I'm like, yeah, I look good here. I like this. So I'm gonna play with the lighting a minute. Oh,
Okay,
do I
sure. Yeah, yeah.
let me see. I have one of those. Oh, it's really intense. That's okay. I think I won't be blinded by the end of the hour. If I turn it off, I'll turn it off. Anyway,
Yeah.
happy Wednesday. We're in the month
Happy
of February.
Wednesday. I know. It's crazy how quickly the time is going. I'm like, is this going to be 2021 where boop, boop, right? And
Right.
I also notice the older I get, I feel like the richer my life, the more complex, the more the time just seems to zip by. Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I just wanted to share. I have a candle here.
Oh,
Hope you
thank
can see it. It's a
you.
handmade candle with a little
That's really
design on it.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh, beautiful,
For your
beautiful.
father,
Thank you.
knowing we have a birthday celebration or a anniversary celebration for him.
Yeah. So my father came into this earth 87 years ago. Oh, and and I don't, and it doesn't even matter why, but I was just like, I woke up this morning and I'm like, February 3rd, yesterday was Groundhog's Day. I'm like, oh, it's dad's birthday. And and I'm lying in bed and I immediately get a download and he's like, I'm here. I'm like, okay. So I'm glad that you are, because like I've shared with you, we communicate, we talk a lot. And and he was like, let's do a little, like, how are you, like, let's do a little check-in, because he can see everything that's going on, but I
Mhm.
think it's different for me to articulate, to verbalize it.
Sure.
So um so i i just kind of talked about what's happening and what's going on, and one of the things that, like, one of the things I want to talk about today are the things that, like, the gifts that he bestowed upon me throughout my life, just, lessons and values and that kind of thing. And of course, I was talking to him about the 350, the project mitzvah, and he was just like, he said, okay, who are your investors? Like, that's where he went immediately. And I was like, well, Dad, of course. I'm like, of course.
Right.
And he's like, well, who are they? And I said, well, I have some ideas, but I'm not really putting voice to it. I have them written down. I can show you later. And he was like, okay. Um, but it was interesting because even like when I worked at Hershey Park, because I worked at Hershey Park for many summers throughout high school and whatnot, and he always said, take at least half of your paycheck, because you're living at home, you don't have expenses. Take at least half of your paycheck and put it away. At least put it in your savings account, because there it can accrue a little bit of interest.
Mhm.
Um, but he was always just one of these, he was a forward thinker. He was always thinking ahead about everything. Like, that was just sort of his way of life, you
Mhm.
know? Um, so yeah, it was really sweet, bittersweet, Um, and and he asked me how mom's doing. And I was honest with him. I just said I said she's doing the best she can do right now.
Mm,
Um, because he's been gone for 13 plus years, and um, some people who talk about, you know, one who has passed on, I've heard people say it gets better or it gets easier with time. And that might be true for some people, but it's not true for everyone,
right.
you know?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I don't know if I ever told you this, but my parents were together since they were 10 years old. Did I ever tell you that?
No.
Like they were literal childhood sweet. Like they knew each other for 63 years. It's a long time.
That's more life together than not.
It
Yeah.
is. Absolutely it is. Yeah.
Wow.
So, yeah. So it wasn't that she just lost her husband, lost the father of her children, lost
Just, right? I mean,
just
even
right. She lost a lifelong partner, friend,
mm,
confidant.
yeah.
So yeah, it's big.
Mm.
Big.
Thank you for sharing that with me. I do feel the immensity of that because meeting someone, let's say in your 30s or 40s, and of course still sharing a life is of immense value and connection. But to think to anyone I've known since like third grade, fourth grade, and then that becoming the love of your life, and then that person transitioning, yeah, I can feel the enormity of that.
Yeah.
Mm. So glad you two connected.
Yeah, me too. I was um I was a little surprised because he doesn't normally come in that way.
Mhm.
And typically I invite him in, or I ask a question, or I'm like, Dad, I want to talk to you for a minute. But he just kind of appeared. I was like, wow, what does he have for me?
And I love his like dadness, of being like, okay, that's your next goal. Okay, well, what are the next steps? It's so provisional,
It
it's so
re-
practical, it's so dad.
it is so dad. He never turned that off, like ever. Which was really great. Even like with his grandkids, he
Mhm.
was the same way with his grandkids than he was with us. Um, yeah, like a lifelong teacher,
Mhm.
without really being an educated teacher, but he was a lifelong teacher. So yeah, it was really sweet. It was really sweet. So yeah. So what you drinking?
Well, I figured since was it bourbon or whiskey? I mean, I feel like
Bourbon.
they're the same in some level to
They
me.
are saying on some level.
So to your father,
Cheers to Dale.
years.
Um, yeah. So I recently started drinking bourbon, which I think I shared with you a while back. And what I didn't realize, like, how smells can really conjure up memories and whatnot. And I never really knew, I never thought about what my parents' drink was, like, because they weren't really big drinkers.
Hmm.
Um, but when my dad drank, he wanted like he wanted something like a cocktail, like
It's like if I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna do it up,
I'm
right?
gonna do it up. And so it was after I bought the bottle of bourbon and I smelled it, and I'm like, oh my God, that was dad's. It took, I'm like, oh, that's dad's drink.
Yeah.
And I don't know if he mixed it or if he drank it straight. But yeah, I'm like, oh, that's his drink. So
Mm.
it was really sweet to have, because I love that. What's it called? It's I know there's a term for it, with this the memories from smell. There's I
I
know
don't know the word, but it's like it's such an automatic, visceral.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Mm. Yeah, I
Oh,
remember once stepping into an elevator and there was, another a woman in there, and she had the perfume or the fragrance of my kindergarten teacher, who I loved, like loved to the moon and back. Was like so formative for me coming to a new country, being like, who's Santa Claus? What's this Jesus business? Okay, an Easter bunny. Okay, tooth fairy. Like, it's a lot of intel at four and
it
a half,
it is,
and
yeah.
learning English, right? And she was so patient with me and so loving. Like, when you can tell somebody really loves you? Um, like she'd read a book to everyone and they'd all fall asleep, and I would get more alert because the story and my imagination, and I'd be sitting in the cot like this at the end, which would
Mm,
have been her break time, but
yeah.
she had me. So she would let me sit next to her and she'd read a second book, you
Oh,
know, or
yeah,
I'd like brush her hair. We'd go up to, it was in a Baptist church, and we'd go up to where the church was and like sit and kind of just look at the stained glass or check in at the nursery where the babies were. But she'd like let me tag along. I really related more to her than the kids too.
yeah,
But just that moment in the elevator, like I almost cried. This poor woman next to me had no idea, but I was like, ah, this kid. And I could just like feel all the love that had been poured into me, and maybe not crying in sadness, but just like overcome,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Yeah. So I get that. I'm glad you got that with the bourbon. That's a cool connection to have.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And I wanted to ask you, I posted earlier on Facebook, but I find that so much of someone's legacy for me falls into like their values and who they chose to be and how they treated people, and how we carry that, like how that shapes us. So I'm curious if there's anything you want to share there about your father's character and his like way of being.
Yeah. So there are a couple things. The one thing that really so my father was the type of father who would literally get on the ground and play. He was not a distant father. He got right in there, would help us build a fort or get muddy or whatever, play with the blocks on the floor, like the whole nine. And so he was always very approachable, but always also very uh, tangible, like
Mhm,
available,
mhm,
very available. And um, and I remember that from a very young age. And one of the things that, throughout my life, I have really taken to heart and I'm very serious about it is commitment.
mhm,
Like, so once I make a commitment to something, once he made a commitment to something, he would stick with it
mhm.
to the bitter end, or not bitter end, but to the end,
Yeah.
right? And really follow through with everything. And that's something that I take really very seriously. And I know that is the more that I show up that way, the more I expect that from other people to show up, because I have very high expectations of myself with certain things, with a lot of things. And so, because of that, I'm like, I hold other people in high regard because I want that from, because if I'm going to give that to them,
Right.
I want that in return. And I don't think that that is too much to ask. I think it's just, and quite honestly, I don't care if it is or not. I really don't. Um, so anyway, um, and I've talked several times about the relationships that I've created over the last 18 months to 24 months that are really formative, that are really important, that continue to be reshaped and remolded and um yeah, I mean like all of it, and so commitment is one thing for sure. And honesty,
Mm,
even when it's not hard, even when it's not easy,
yeah.
um because in my own experience I suck at lying. Like I am a terrible liar. And
Gift.
so what?
I said it's a gift.
It's a
Not
gift,
Yeah, not to have that.
right?
Yeah.
I don't do it well. Like I said, I'm really terrible at it. And the reason I'm terrible at it is because my memory is not that great when it comes to not telling the truth. So I'm like, I gotta just be honest. Even if the people don't want to hear it, I will never remember a lie, but I will always remember the truth, you know? Um, and so that was, he never like he never really, he didn't, he made an intention to be really forthright with us.
Mm,
And like if things were scary or uncertain, it's not that he would keep it, he wouldn't keep it from us, but he was just like, this is how it is right now.
right.
This is how it is. And I was like, oh, okay, I get that. And so that for me, there's some real safety and security in
Trust.
knowing and trusting that, and knowing that the world isn't going to fall apart because there are a couple of things that are crumbling.
Right.
It's just not, you know. We will get through this. Um, so the truth was always really important. Um, and then, one of my favorite memories, I was probably 3, not quite 4, and my father was in the army for 20 years. He joined up in 57 and he retired in 77. And this was in the very early, no, in the mid 60s. And he got papers to go to Panama for 4 years. I was 3. So I'm the second, the oldest. I was 3. My brother was maybe 2, 1. And my youngest sister, I think, was still in my mom's belly.
Mm,
And he came home, and my parents had obviously already talked about it, like my mother knew about it, but he came home and he grabbed the encyclopedia. You remember encyclopedias?
yes.
Some people don't. Some people are like, what? He grabbed the encyclopedia and he opened it up to Central America, and he got the C and he got the P encyclopedias. He opened up Central America, and then he opened up Panama. And he was like, this is where we'll be living, and this is where I will be working. So I will be crossing the canal every day to go back and forth to work. And I mean, and so it was very exciting. Like he turned it into this kind of like, not a game, but a very exciting adventure.
Yeah.
And I was like, God, that's just a memory that is so sweet and fun. And because we had no idea what we were getting into. Like we
We probably
really,
couldn't either, right?
none of us did. Like none of us had any idea. Um, so and we made the most of it. We lived on base, and we made the most of our time there. And he was like every weekend, he was off every weekend. My mom was off every weekend, and we would just climb into the car. We had a purple, like a purple station wagon with these leather seats. Oh my God. I can't even believe. Oh my gosh. No seat belts, like,
Of course
you know
not.
what I mean? Because they just didn't wear them. And we would just head to the beach and for the day. And yeah, I mean that's just kind of what we did. And we swam year round, competitively swam year round. And my parents always had us in activities. Um, because that's all there was. That's what you did. You just did activities. And so we swam, we were in the Girl Scouts, we were in the Brownies, we did all that kind of stuff. And yeah, I mean, had I known, if I knew then what I know now about the tropics and the dangers, I would not have, we wouldn't have been as an adventure some, as it, we would not have been as adventuresome. We wouldn't have been. So
Yeah.
there's something really sweet about being naive. Ignorance is bliss.
Well, and I'm hearing too this thread of integrity as it relates to your father. The being deliberate about creating commitments and then really honoring them feels really integrous. The being honest and you know forward about what's going to happen and what's going on, and even who knows for him, like, oh my gosh, moving the whole family for 4 years, like that's a load as an adult when one is
Yes.
adulting.
Right.
And yet the way that he framed it for you all, and hopefully somewhat for his own mindset, is like, hey, this is the next thing that's going to happen and we're going to do it together. I hear to me like how trusting I would feel to have someone who's going to be straight with me even if I'm a little kid,
Hmm.
right? Yeah. Yeah, it's really
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah. He was a really solid being. Yeah. So we never second guessed. We were just like, yeah, let's do it, Dad. Let's do it. Oh my gosh. Oh yeah.
Yeah, and I'm also curious too, knowing you for the time that I have, and particularly as we've done this podcast, more deepening of that friendship, how you have also inherited some of those characteristics, right? Of like the commitment, the honesty, the even like, here comes this adventure with like the 350. Don't know how it's all going to shake out, but here's the framing for this next
Right.
great adventure. Like I see those commonalities. Do you feel like you're a lot like him?
Um, yeah. I mean, yes. So the short answer is yes. Um, Especially, when it comes to thinking, like if I'm only thinking in the box, but to have the ability to think out, like to not be afraid to think outside the box.
Mhm.
There's more, like to really have a greater vision for it. Um, because I think, one of the things I've talked about is the 350 has been easier for me to roll. It's getting easier to roll off my tongue than it was initially, right? And I think because I've had time to get comfortable with it
Yeah.
and not push and be really intentional about pausing and patient with it, that is what's given me the comfort and the trust to be like, it's going to be okay. I don't even know what that means. I don't know how it's going to shake out. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. I just know, and I really innately believe that everything's going to turn out okay.
Mm.
Yeah.
I hear inside of that too, not the kind of confidence that people talk about that's a little bit of posturing and, the fake it till you make it, but the kind of confidence that comes from, I know I can figure it out,
Yeah.
right? The sort of the self trust
Yeah.
aspect, trusting the universe, trusting yourself. I that kind of confidence feels less elusive and easier to cultivate.
Mm,
I won't say easier, but more accessible to cultivate. Of like, it's figure outable.
it is.
Yeah.
Like everything is figure outable, you know? And I think that I don't know if I wrote this to you in a post or something, maybe a text, but I really believe that's one of my superpowers, like problem solving and figuring things out.
Hmm.
And if I've made an attempt or made several attempts and I'm still feeling like I need a little more support, I will reach out for support. Like I'm okay
Yeah.
asking for support. I've never been one to shy away from that.
Well, that's equally, it's the resourcefulness side of it's figure outable is, oh, I can lean on resources.
Yeah,
I can seek advisors.
yeah,
Not the rugged individualism of like, I can and only I can.
right. No,
Yeah.
no, yeah,
Hmm. I love that. I'm
yeah.
excited.
Thanks. Yeah.
And do you like on a birthday like this, do you check in with your mom? Do you check in with any of your siblings? Is there like any connection or tradition?
We haven't had a tradition. Typically, though, I will either get a text or an email, typically a text from at least one or two siblings.
Mm.
Remember today's dad's birthday, or, remember, and I'm like, I can't really forget, but that kind of thing. Um, Sometimes my mom is even she didn't today, but in the past she has left a voicemail thinking about dad today, that kind of thing. But I didn't for not that I need to figure out why, but I just wasn't really feeling the necessity of that today. I just was like, I just want to celebrate him
Mhm.
for myself,
Yeah.
Um, and all my siblings are on Facebook with me, so whether they saw it or not, I don't know.
Yeah.
Um, were
And
you
it's
gonna say
such a
something?
personal thing. Do you know what I mean? It's such a personal thing how we celebrate, how we grieve. I
Right,
like there's no wrong answer to me because it has to be true and aligned with our hearts.
right,
Yeah.
right. Yeah,
Mm.
yeah,
Wow. I
yeah.
wish I had met him. Maybe I will.
You will.
you
I
know,
I mean, it's always a possibility, right?
it's so neat to meet someone who has sort of shaped you in a lot of ways and who's, I think with any good guardian, who's stewarding another human, it's hard not to inherit behaviors or um, yeah, knowledge, just like a certain kind of wisdom and knowledge from
Yeah,
a good guardian. I think that's thinking of downloads, right? Like just being around someone can give you a download or a transmission of energy.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I don't know that I would have articulated that way, but yes, to all of that. Yeah.
And you said he laughed a lot. Was that a piece I remember? Like
Oh my
laughing?
gosh. Well, someone else wrote, I think my friend Gary wrote, or one of my friends wrote something about his laughter. And my friend Jana wrote something about his laughter. So it was really sweet for a couple of my high school friends who knew my dad
Mhm.
to pipe in and write a little something. I was like, oh my gosh, yes. Yes, his laughter and his wisdom and his just solidarity. He was
Mhm.
like I said, a really solid person and in solidarity with others and committed um and he was a great storyteller. Like
Mm.
he was such a good, like I always appreciate a really good storyteller. And I think that's because I had my dad as a model from a really young age, And oh my God. And sometimes like he would add a little bit of fiction in just to make it a little more dramatic. I'm like, where'd that come from? Oh my gosh. Yeah, that was just so him. But yeah, it was really, um, yeah, but he had a very infectious laugh. And when he did laugh, like people, he had a very recognizable laugh. And people were like, "Oh, that's Dale. I can hear him." Yeah, yeah, very sweet.
I love when there's certain people when they laugh, it makes other people in the room laugh. You know, that kind of.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, that makes me happy.
yeah. I love that too. I do. I love infectious kinds of good energy and especially laughter. Yeah,
And I'm
yeah.
curious, I'm going to ask this as a relationship coach, but like, where did you or could you feel into as a kid what your parents' relationship was like?
Um, so as a kid, I don't know that I had an awareness so much. Um, and I say that because, when you have four kids under the age of 7, it's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot. And so I think that they were really trying to survive,
Mm,
really just trying to survive, working on maintaining and and doing their best to give us the best life possible.
mhm,
And so in their own way, whatever way that was,
mm,
And so I just knew that, like, when it came to like family values, um, there was never a question about the six of us sitting down to dinner together every night of the week. We never did not sit down at the table and have dinner.
yeah.
And that was with three or four of us playing sports and getting home on the late sports bus at like 6:30, sitting down to dinner at 7, and then having a full dinner with conversation, leaving the table around 8, and then homework or whatever. Um, so that was a priority. And that for certain, it shaped me. That shaped a lot of my values and
Mhm,
character.
mhm,
Um, but as far as a couple goes, they never fought in front of us. Like, we never saw conflict.
mhm,
And at the same time, I would also say, knowing now as an adult, um, they didn't have, like, nobody has a perfect marriage. They had their struggles, right?
mhm,
And so, um, but I will say that, like, I've heard other people say, well, my household was really loud and we fought and we loved hard and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, that's great, and I asked myself, I wonder what that would be like,
mhm,
because I didn't have that experience. But there was also a real safety in them not fighting. Like, I always felt like everything, for the most part, because there was enough drama with me, like being the feeler,
mm,
being the empath, being the really highly sensitive one, and not understanding where I fit in, like just really feeling out of sorts in my family because of who I am.
mhm,
Um, that was really challenging. And my mom didn't know what to do with me. She really had a hard time.
mm,
Um, I feel like my dad had a better idea of who I was because my dad had the ability to really soften
mm,
and to really be patient and hold space. So when I was really struggling, like when I was in college and I was really struggling, like I didn't, and if I called home, I did not want my mom to answer the phone because she wants to fix everything. My mom's a fixer. My dad was just like, okay, so I'm going to give you a moment to kind of catch your breath and
So he
get
could
through
be
the
there.
tears.
He could
What?
be with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that we can be present together. In so many words, he would say this, and then you can tell me what's going on. Um,
Mm.
so he was very good at that kind of thing, that kind of parenting. And I think that's probably one of the reasons that they stayed together for as long as they did, because they were really kind of polar opposites when it came to personality
Mhm.
and their sun signs and like all of it.
Yeah.
My mom was very high strung, kind of has an I'm gonna anxiety. She's got anxiety that runs with her sisters and her family. My dad is much more grounded,
Mhm.
much more low key. Yeah, I mean, he's low key, but he's also curious, and he doesn't like my mom lives in a place of fear a lot, and my dad is like, let's figure this out.
Yeah, I got chills because I was just thinking like, man, he would have made a great coach in like the
Ugh.
present-centered coaching model. And it
Mm,
makes sense if your mom had an anxious style that it's like,
uh-huh.
oh, it'll relieve my anxiety if I can fix it.
Right.
Most rescuers and fixers have that. It'll help me
Yeah.
chillax if this problem just goes away. So let me drill down at it.
Right.
Where someone who does have more of a secure style is like, this person will figure it out. I'm just going to be here with them.
Yeah.
Right. Because so often, especially for us empaths, if we can just feel it and move through the wave of emotions, we're resourceful on the other end of that.
Yeah.
Once
Yeah.
our nervous system is a little settled,
Right.
right? We don't need someone to give us the solution. Once we felt through it, we can come to a solution for ourselves.
Right.
And it sounds like he knew that about you.
Yeah, I mean, he must have, he must have, because I would say that he had some of that himself,
Hmm.
you know,
Hmm.
um, yeah, he had some of that himself.
The empathy part, like,
Yeah, the empathy.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. That's so cool that you had someone who could get you. And it also sucks, I think, on the other end to be amidst people who aren't as highly sensitive
yeah,
and navigate what that means in your belonging
right.
story.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah. So the last thing that I want to share, this is probably like my favorite story. Um, so my junior year of college, I guess, ish. 96. I left New Year's Eve, 95, landed in Italy on the 1st of January, 96. And I studied abroad for 6 months in Rome. And we had 10-week semesters. So we had 10 weeks, and then we had 3 weeks off for spring break, and then we had 10 weeks. And initially, the plan was I had my, both coming and going ticket, and I was going to stay and travel after I was finished with school. I was going to travel Europe, backpack or whatever. And anyway, so that was the initial plan when I left the United States, when I left Philadelphia. And my parents came for spring break. And it was the best thing ever, because I've never had that much time with my parents. It
Mm.
was really very sweet, and I still stayed where I was staying, and they stayed at a hotel near the Vatican, and then we would meet up, I would let them kind of do their thing, and we would meet up later in the day. But we did a 10 city 8-day trek the day after they arrived. I was like, what am I doing to my parents? But I was like, this is the only time we got to do it. And we had so much fun. And my dad and house wine. And he's not, like I said, he's not a big drinker. So when he started drinking the house wine, I was like, here we go. And his tongue would get loose and he would just start like chat, like he was already chatty, but his chatty level I was like, what is happening? So anyway, and then my mom, the whole time, she kept asking for decaf coffee. You cannot, like, it does not exist. We are in Italy, Mom. There's no such thing
Poor
as
thing. So she's
it.
like got her natural anxiety levels with caffeine added.
Oh my God, it was hilarious. It was just every night at dinner. Do you have decaf coffee? And I'm just like, oh my God. Anyway, it was just really funny. It became a running joke. So anyway, um, so we did this 8-day 10-city trek around northern Italy, and then we came back to Rome, and because I wanted them to spend the brunt of their time in Rome because there's so much to see. It's a very rich, thick, full city with a lot of cultures. I'm sure you can imagine. Maybe you've been there. I don't know. And then we did a day and a half trip down to Pompeii. When I go back, because I will go back, when I go back, I want to spend a little more time in Pompeii. It was just really something.
When
It's
you go
really,
back with
really,
me.
what?
When you go back with me.
When I go back with you, it's really, I can't even, it's really a lot to take in. But anyway, so what I failed to mention is that I was really homesick.
Mm.
The first semester, I was really homesick, and it was a really rainy 10 weeks. Like they said, it was the most rain they ever had, and it was freezing cold. So I was really kind of miserable. I didn't realize I was homesick, but I really was homesick. So when my parents came, I was just like glued, glued to them. And on their last night there at dinner, um, I started talking and I just started crying. Like I broke down, and my dad's like, "Oh my gosh, what's going on?" I said, "Well, you're leaving tomorrow," and he's like, "I know we have to we have to go back to the States," and I'm like, "But I really want to come with you," and he's like, "So what's really going on?" And I said, "Well, I don't feel like I have found my niche of friends,
Mhm.
you know." Um, like the American, like I was hanging out with some Americans that really weren't my thing. They just weren't my people. Um, and I said, I don't, I want to come back. And he said to me, he's so wise. He said to me, so he's like, if you want to come back with Mom and I tomorrow, you're more than welcome to come back. That's fine. And if you do, I would be amiss to say that if you do come back, that you might regret not staying another semester, because it could be very different than the last semester, because you will have different classes, you will meet different people. The weather's a lot warmer than it was when it's just things are very different. You're spending a lot more time outside and blah 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 blah. And I'm like, okay, you're right, you're right, you're right. And he said, but he's like, and what we can do in the next couple weeks is we'll talk on the phone, of course. And if you decide that you want to move your ticket from the middle of August to come home at the end of June, because the semester was all the way to the end of June, we'll do it.
Mm.
And I did. I mean, I stayed, and I'm so glad that I stayed. Like he knew, he had the wherewithal, he had the wisdom to be like, okay, yes, and to like really kind of talk it out. Thank God. He was so, yeah, really on point, and did it in a way that was so gentle
Yeah.
and practical and very caring. And Yeah, it was easy to take in. Yeah,
Mm.
I know.
Feeling so touched by that because he gave you the like, yes, we can take care of this tomorrow, but he gave you the safety net of, and you can shorten your stay at the very end. And he gave you the cost it might be, what it might cost you to not stay. Like he
Right.
just kind of basically gave you, like, choose your own adventure here. And whichever you choose, we support you.
Yeah,
That's beautiful.
yeah.
Yeah. Wow. I
I
love that you all had that adventure together. And, this doesn't occur to me as an only child, obviously, of not having the complete attention
yeah,
and devotion of your parents, like that was a unique
yeah,
constellation.
yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah.
Mm, that's so cool. I had no idea you studied abroad. I hear people say, oh, I studied abroad in Japan or whatever. And I'm like, "Pff," but Italy, I'm like, ah, what? What did you study out of curiosity?
Well, my major in college was fashion design. I know.
Who
People are like,
are
what?
you? This is amazing.
I know. And so I really like, first of all, I went to college. I started college when I was 30. So I had like just a lot of life experience going into college, right? And
Hmm.
I also knew kind of like how to play the game.
Uh-huh.
So I always had a job on campus, work study job. And I had like I knew the like I knew that I wanted to get in with the players. Does that make it like the people who were head of student council? I didn't want to be in student council, but I wanted but I wanted to be friends with them because I knew they could get me it connected to like the president of the college or the VP or head of student like that they knew people, right?
Mhm.
I didn't want to I know that I didn't want to have to do that work. I mean, I did a little bit of it, but anyway, so the president of the college that I went to was on the board of directors at John Cabot University, the school I studied. And where I went, I think at that point they had maybe 5 majors, very small college. And it was 50% Italian students and 50% abroad, but a lot of Americans.
Mhm.
And nobody from my college had ever studied at John Cabot. And and I was working at I had worked at the president's office for a summer and a semester, so he knew me. And because I was a non-traditional student, I was in my 30s at this point. I knew how to talk to adults.
Yeah.
So anyway, um, when I decided, I was like, I want to go to John Cabot, he was so in my corner and made things happen. Just like, all right, we're going to do it. Because he was so excited that someone, me, was going to go to a college that he was on the board for. And it was the first time. So anyway, so that's because I could have gone to Temple because they have a design program at Temple. I could have gone to more College of Art. Like they had a lot of, but I was just like, no, I want to go to John Cabot. Because people know Dr. Gallagher and I knew that I would be taken care of, but I also knew that I would have a different experience. I also wanted to go somewhere where I didn't know anyone. Like
Mhm.
I really wanted to be absorbed into the culture and have to work, like do it the hard way, sort of in a way. Um, and I wouldn't have changed it for anything.
Yeah.
It was really the hands down the best experience I've ever had.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I hear that it was an edge stretch and it was character building because it was an edge stretch.
yeah, yeah,
Huh. So interesting because this morning I woke up with this, I don't know what to call it, like this intuitive hit of like, oh, what is like masculine allies, like male allies, that sort of what is real true masculinity, healthy masculinity, the provisional, the loving, the caring, all that stuff. And hearing you share, whether it's about your dad or this person who sort of championed your um, going overseas, it's like it is that healthy male ally
Yeah.
energy,
Yeah.
right? Instead of sort of the, I'm going to call it the thrown compass of masculinity now that's like off its true north.
Right. Yeah.
It feels really nourishing to me, really generative.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. There was no, like, I hear what you're saying. And I never felt a reason to not trust. Like, I just knew that I was in the right hands.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was really important.
Mm.
Yeah.
I love knowing this about you. I'm just like, for all the conversations we've had in the time we've known each other, it's like I love the notion of like, I'm surprised today, I'm like, you've surprised me with some of your
Oh.
stories.
Oh.
And it's also creating an even more like multifaceted view, right? Just keeps reminding me we can't automate people. We can't think we know everything about them. Yeah, it's neat to know that like we're still all full of surprises in that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. So great.
You're welcome. Yeah.
Feel like a little bit more included is not the right word, but a little bit more like a little closer to your dad, a little bit closer to your experience,
Yeah.
a little closer to your family, just knowing those sweet memories and those, yeah, really loving moments of care. Hmm.
Thank you. And thanks for holding the space for it. Yeah.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, I'm all about celebrating dad tonight. That feels good to me.
Yeah.
So it's so I don't know, profoundly beautiful to me when we can honor in that way. Really take the space and the time to honor.
Yeah.
You know?
Hmm.
Mm, yeah.
So I've been chatting away, and I just wanted to ask you, how you doing?
Thank you. I'm good. I'm good. I'm feeling into it's an interesting energy for me. It's almost like it happens to me in the winter. It's a it's like almost like a mystical feeling. It's like a moment where I like want to spend more time with other energies, like a little bit of a, yeah, I don't know, like there's a bit of a more wanting more meditation, wanting more vision questing, wanting more sort of like, I don't know if the veils are any thinner at this point or if I'm just a little bit more still.
Mm.
But sort of what we talked about like spiritual guides and ancestors, like I just feel a little bit more uh, my own mystical energy connecting with the mystical energies. So yeah, it's kind of just like, that feels fun. That feels, I'm curious,
Yeah.
and I think really watched myself handle something well of like having, for us, having a shift in sort of our couples coaching dynamic where our coach, who we've loved and adored and kind of wanted to grow old with, uh, kind of basically said, like, I'm not going to do these kind of sessions anymore and offered a pretty big package that's out of our range. And so it was like I went through the like, oh my God, we're stranded over here, right? Here's somebody I thought we'd work with for years and years, and we've made such progress with. And also the sort of unceremonious like email after like a year and a half. right?
Mhm.
Which chaps my ops ass,
Yeah. Yeah.
like WTF, like that could have been done
Yeah.
on a Zoom call with something. And I really felt myself start to get wound up in, I'm gonna call it the victim story. No, like that's not cool. How they do that? And quite valid, right? And then I had this moment, I attribute it to all my spiritual work accumulating, where it was like, what if this is the best thing for us? Right? Just that question, like, what if this is for us,
Mm.
not like against us, right? And then Richard and I just being like, what do we do? Right? Like, we want to keep what we call our preventative care, where every 2 weeks we cough it up, we clean it up, and there's not anything under the rug, right?
Right.
As best we can, obviously. And so looking at the website, at the relationship school, like looking at the coaches, seeing who resonates, knowing who I felt good with, and having our first coaching session with her and being like, this is not at all to compare coaches, right? But like this is the next step.
Good.
Having like a fresh set of eyes on us with a
Mhm.
fresh perspective, with a different energy as our first coaching session this year, it like felt really good to me. Obviously, we're going to sit with it, but I just realized like the work I've done, I think, to go from like, what the fuck is this shit? Right? To like, what if this is the best thing that's happening for us? And quite quickly, I'd say within, I didn't respond to the email for a day or two, but the like, okay, wait, you know how to be an author here versus a victim, like, and asking that kind of expansive question, like, allowed us to be like, okay, what else is there, right? It's like, I think of water. The water's not like, damn it, there's a rock in front of me, and just standing there being a stubborn droplet. It's like, "Meh, okay,
Yeah.
just learning to be more like water that way." That's been like probably the biggest thing that has sort of happened in the last week of being like, and then being like, cool,
Mhm. Good.
thanks, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I want to live more of my life that way, you know?
Yeah.
Like, ooh, what's the opportunity here? Like what's this growing in me and my
I
character
love
and my
that. I
patience and
love
my
that.
how's
Yeah.
this growing me? Instead of like, how is this thwarting me?
Right. Right.
Right?
And when we take those words and we just shift them a little bit,
Hmm.
simple, I mean, it changes everything, of course, but just mentally, what that does, oh my God, it opens all kinds of opportunities.
Yeah.
Only just, and that is only on the mental level. You know what I mean? That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's an important point. It's like when we are set on a certain agenda and we feel thwarted or upset, and that's like all we're looking at, we're limiting all the options and the possibilities,
Right.
right? And it is that moment of turning towards like, okay, how could this possibly be benefiting?
Yeah.
And then you've got, I don't know, it just feels like a big game to play. So I feel good about that.
Good.
Yeah. Thanks for asking.
Yeah. You're welcome.
Yeah. I feel pretty complete. To me, it's like not that it was a slow week since I last saw you, but it feels like that was the big shift in my world.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah. Hmm.
hmm.
Is there anything else you want to be seen in or share as we celebrate your dad? Do you feel
Um, I'm looking around going, Oh, so I finished going through every part of my apartment when it comes to purging. I've gone through every tote, every box, every drawer, like literally finished that last night. And so that feels really good. And it feels not 100% complete because what I'm going to do next is kind of go through and do another sweep, you know.
Yeah.
Um, but I'm looking around going, I'm amazed at how much not only that I've gotten rid of, but I've condensed.
Hmm.
Oh my gosh. I'm like, yay. It just feels so, it feels really, um, yeah, really cathartic,
Yeah.
really cathartic and really healthy.
That's
Yeah.
the word that was coming up for me. It feels healthy to me too.
Yeah.
Just to create space, to create a place for an exhale, and to let go, like you said, of a lot of things that don't serve you.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Mm, yeah.
Thank you for this time. And thank you for sharing such sacred memories
Mm,
and beautiful, beautiful honorings of your father. Yeah.
yeah.
Feels so sweet and tender, and like my heart just feels really warm and cozy and hugged by knowing all of that about you.
Yeah. Thanks. Ah, I'm appreciating that I had a place to bring it
Yeah.
and share it. Yeah.
Yeah. That makes sense. May we all have a place.
May we all have a place
Yeah.
for our stories and for our memories, you know?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's important. That's so important.
Mm.
Yeah. Mm.